All right. Let me get set up here. Welcome back. We are on chapter 54. Bless the child, Argetlam. And the last chapter was very long, and we met Ajahad, the leader of the Varden. And let's see. And Oric got instructed to help Aragon and Saphira get used to the mountain fortress. So, chapter 54. Bless the child, Argetlam. Aragon stretched in the hall. He was stiff from sitting so long. Beside him, the twins entered Ajahad's study and closed the door. Aragon looked at Oric. "I'm sorry that you're in trouble because of me," he apologized.
"Don't bother yourself," grunted Oric, tugging on his beard. "Ajahad gave me what I wanted."
Even Saphira was startled by that statement. "What do you mean?" said Aragon.
"You can't...
Oh. You can't train or fight? You're stuck guarding me? How can that be what you wanted?" The dwarf eyed him quietly.
"Ajahad is a good leader. He understands how to keep the law, yet remain just. I have been punished by his command. But I'm also one of Hrothgar's subjects. Under his rule, I'm still free to do as I wish."
Aragon realized it would be unwise to forget Oric's dual loyalty and the split nature of power in Trojanheim. "Ajahad just placed you in a powerful position, didn't he?" Oric chuckled deeply.
"That he did, and in such a way the twins can't complain about it. This'll irritate them for sure. Ajahad's a tricky one, he is. Come, lad, I'm sure you're hungry, and we have your dragon to settle in."
Saphira hissed. Aragon said, "Her name is Saphira." Oric made a small bow to her.
"My apologies. I'm sure to remember that."
He took an orange lamp from the wall and led them down the hallway. "Can others in Further Endure use magic?" asked Aragon, struggling to keep up with the dwarf's brisk pace. He cradled Zarok carefully, concealing the symbol on the sheath with his arm.
"Few enough,"
said Oric, with a swift shrug under his mail.
"And the ones we have can't do much more than heal bruises. They'll all tend to Araya because of the strength needed to heal her."
"Except the twins."
"Oi,"
grumbled Oric.
"She wouldn't want their help anyway. Their arts are not for healing. Their talent lie in scheming and plotting for power, to everyone else's detriment. Daenora, Ajahad's predecessor, allowed them to join the Varden because he needed their support. You can't oppose the Empire with spellcasters who hold down their own on the field of battle. They're a nasty pair, but they do have their uses."
They entered one of the 4 main tunnels that divided Trojanheim. Clusters of dwarves and humans strolled through it, voices echoing loudly off the polished floor. The conversation stopped abruptly as they saw Saphira. Scores of eyes fixed on her. Oric ignored the spectators and turned left, heading towards one of Trojanheim's distant gates. "Where are we going?" asked Aragon.
"Out these halls, so Saphira can fly to the dragonhold above Island Mithram, the Star Rose. The dragonhold doesn't have a roof. Trojanheim's peak is open to the sky, like that of Fardendur. So that is, you, Saphira, will be able to glide straight down into the hold. It is there where the riders used to stay when they visited Trojanheim."
"Won't it be cold and damp without a roof?" asked Aragon.
"Nay,"
Oric shook his head.
"Fardendur protects us from the elements. Neither rain nor snow intrude here. Besides, the hole's walls are lined with marble caves for dragons. They provide all the shelter necessary. All you need fear are the icicles. When they fall, they've been known to cleave a horse in two.
I will be fine, assured Saphira. A marble cave is safer than any of the other places we've stayed. Perhaps. Do you think Murtagh will be all right? Ajahad strikes me as an honorable man. Unless Murtagh tries to escape, I doubt he will be harmed. Aragorn crossed his arms, unwilling to talk further. He was dazed by the change in circumstances from the day before. Their mad race from Gilead was finally over, but his body expected to continue running and riding. Where are our horses?
In the stables by the gate. We can visit them before leaving Trojanheim.
They exited Trojanheim through the same gate they had entered. The gold griffins gleamed with colored highlights, garnered from scores of lanterns. The sun had moved during Aragorn's talk with Ajahad. Light no longer entered further door through the crater opening. Without those moted rays, the inside of the hollow mountain was velvety black. The only illumination came from Trojanheim, which sparkled brilliantly in the gloom. The city mountain's radiance was enough to brighten the ground hundreds of feet away. Oric pointed at Trojanheim's white pinnacle.
Fresh meat and pure mountain wait ye up there, he told Saphira. You may stay in any of the caves. Make your choice. Bedding will be laid down in it, and no one will disturb you.
I thought we were going to go together. I don't want to sleep separate, protested Aragorn. Oric turned to him.
Rider Aragorn, I will do everything to accommodate you. But it would be best if Saphira waits in the dragon hold while you eat. The tunnels to the banquet hall aren't large enough for her to accompany us.
Why can't you just bring me food in the hold?
Because, said Oric with a guarded expression, the food is prepared down there, and it is a long trip to the top. If you wish, a servant could be sent up to the hold with a meal for you. It would take some time, but you could eat with Saphira then.
He actually means it, thought Aragorn, astonished that they would do so much for him. But the way Oric said it made him wonder if the dwarf was testing him somehow. I'm weary, said Saphira, and this dragon hold sounds to my liking. Go, have your meal. Then come to me. It will be soothing to rest together without fear of wild animals or soldiers. We have suffered the hardships of trail too long. Aragorn looked at her thoughtfully, then said to Oric, I'll eat down here. The dwarf smiled, seeming satisfied. Aragorn unstrapped Saphira's saddle so he could lie down without discomfort. Would you take Zarok with you? Yes, she said, gathering up the sword and saddle in her claws. But keep your bow. We must trust these people, though not to the point of foolishness. I know, he said, disquieted. With an explosive leap, Saphira swept off the ground into the still air. The steady whoosh of her wings was the only sound in the darkness. As she disappeared over the rim of Trojanheim's peak, Oric let out a long breath.
Ah, boy, you have been blessed indeed. I find a sudden longing in my heart for open skies and soaring cliffs, and the thrill of the hunt like a hawk. Still, my feet are better on the ground, preferably under it.
He clasped his hands loudly.
I neglect my duties as a host. I know you've not dined since that pitiful dinner the twins saw fit to give you, so come, let's find the cooks and beg meat and bread for them.
Aragorn followed the dwarf back to Trojanheim through the labyrinth of corridors until they came to a long room filled with rows of stone tables, only high enough for dwarves. Fire blazed in soapstone ovens behind the long counter. Oric spoke words in an unfamiliar language to a stout, ruddy-faced dwarf, who promptly handed the stone platters piled with steaming mushrooms and fish. Then Oric took Aragorn up several flights of stairs and into a small alcove carved out of Trojanheim's outer wall. There they sat cross-legged. Aragorn wordlessly reached for his food. When the platters were empty, Oric sighed with contentment and pulled out a long-stemmed pipe. He lit it, saying,
A worthy repast, though it needed a good draught of mead to wash it down properly.
Aragorn surveyed the ground before. Do you farm in Furtherendure?
No, there is only enough sunlight for moss, mushrooms, and mold. Trojanheim cannot survive without supplies from the surrounding valleys, which is the only reason many of us choose to live elsewhere in the Bower Mountains.
Then, are there other dwarf cities?
Not as many as you would like, and Trojanheim is the greatest of them.
Leaning on an elbow, Oric took a deep pull on his pipe.
You have only seen the lower levels, so it hasn't been apparent, but most of Trojanheim is deserted.
The further up, the further, I can't with this guy. The further, look, I'm trying. Okay, I'll get better at this accent. I promise. The farther, I can't. Okay, I'm just gonna. The further up you go, the emptier it gets. Entire floors have remained untouched for centuries.
Most dwarves prefer to dwell under Trojanheim and further endure in caverns and passageways that riddle the rock. Through the centuries, we have tunneled extensively under the Boar Mountains. It is possible to walk from one end of the mountain range to the other without ever setting foot on the surface.
It seems like a waste to have all that unused space in Trojanheim, commented Aragon. Oric nodded.
Some have argued for abandoning the place because of its drain on our resources, but Trojanheim does perform one invaluable task.
What's that?
In times of misfortune, it can house our entire nation. There have only been 3 instances in our history where we have been forced to that extreme, but each time it has saved us from certain and utter destruction. That is why it is always kept garrisoned, ready for use.
I've never seen anything as magnificent, admitted Aragon. Oric smiled around his pipe.
I'm glad you find it so. It took generations to build Trojanheim, and our lives are much longer than those of men. Unfortunately, because of the cursed empire, few outsiders are allowed to see its glory.
How many Varden are here?
Dwarves or humans?
Humans. I want to know how many have fled the empire. Oric exhaled a long puff of smoke that coiled lazily around his head.
There are about 4,000 of your kin here, but that's a poor indicator of what you want to know. Only people who wish to fight come here. The rest of them are under King Orin's protection in Surda.
So few, thought Aragon with a sinking feeling. The royal army alone outnumbered nearly 16,000 when it was fully marshaled, not counting the Urgles. Why doesn't Orin fight the Empire himself? He asked.
If he were to show open hostility, said Oric, Galbatorix would crush him. As it is, Galbatorix withholds the destruction because he considers Surda a minor threat, which is a mistake. It's through Orin's assistance that the Varden have most of their weapons and supplies. Without him, there would be no resisting the Empire. Don't despair over the number of humans in Trojanheim. There are many dwarves here, many more than you have seen, and all will fight when the time comes. Orin has also promised us troops for when we battle Galbatorix. The elves pledged their help as well.
Aragon absently touched Saphira's mind and found her busy eating a bloody haunch with gusto. He noticed once more the hammer and stars engraved in Oric's helm. What does that mean? I saw it on the floor in Trojanheim. Oric lifted an iron-bound cap off his head and brushed a rough finger over the engraving.
It's a symbol of my clan. We are the Intigem, metalworkers and master smiths. The hammer and stars are inlaid in Trojanheim's floor because it was a personal crest of Corgan, our founder. Our clan to rule, with 12 surrounding, King Hrothgar and Durmgist Ingentum, as well as was brought my house much glory, much honor.
When they returned the platters to the cook, they passed a dwarf in the hall. He stopped before Aragon, bowed and said respectfully,
Argetlam.
The dwarf left Aragon fumbling for an answer, flushed with unease, yet also strangely pleased with the gesture. No one had ever bowed to him before. What did he say? He asked, leaning closer to Oric. Oric shrugged, embarrassed.
It's an elven word that was used to refer to the riders. It means silver hand.
Aragon glanced at his gloved hand, thinking of the Gedway Ignacia, which whitened his palm.
Do you wish to return to Saphira?
Is there somewhere I could bathe first? I haven't been able to wash off the grime of the road for a long time. Also, my shirt is blood-stained and torn, and it stinks. I'd like to replace it, but I don't have any money to buy a new one. Is there any way I could work for one?
Do you seek to insult Hrothgar's hospitality, Aragon? Demanded Oric. As long as you are in Trojanheim, you won't have to buy a thing. You'll pay for it in other ways. Ajahad and Hrothgar will see to that. Come, I'll show you where to wash, and then where to fetch your shirt.
He took Aragon down a long staircase until they were well below Trojanheim. The corridors were tunnels now, which cramped Aragon because they were only 5 feet high, and all the lanterns were red.
So the light doesn't blind you when you leave or enter a dark cavern, explained Oric.
They entered a bare room with a small door on the far side. Oric pointed.
There are pools there, along with the bushes and soap. Leave your clothes there. I'll have new ones waiting for you when you get out.
Aragon thanked him and started to undress. It felt oppressive being alone underground, especially with the low rock ceiling. He stripped quickly and hurried through the door into total darkness. He inched forward until his foot touched warm water and eased himself into it. The pool was mildly salty but soothing and calm. For a moment he was afraid of drifting away from the door into deeper water, but as he waded forward he discovered the water reached only to his waist. He groped over a slippery wall until he found the soap and bushes and scrubbed himself. Brushes, not bushes. After he floated with his eyes closed, enjoying the warmth. When he emerged, dripping, into the lightened room, he found a towel, a fine linen shirt, and a pair of breeches. The clothes fit him reasonably well. Satisfied, he went out into the tunnel. Oric was waiting for him, pipe in hand. They climbed the stairs back up to Trojanheim, then exited the city mountain. Aragon gazed at Trojanheim's peak and called Saphira with his mind. As she flew down from the dragonhold, he asked, "How do you communicate with people at the top of Trojanheim?" Oric chuckled.
That's a problem we solved long ago. You didn't notice, but behind the open arches and the line, each level is a single unbroken staircase that spirals to the top wall of Trojanheim's central chamber. The stairs climb all the way to the dragonhold above Isdar Mithrim. We call it Volturn, the endless staircase. Running up and down isn't swift enough for an emergency, nor convenient enough for casual use. Instead, we use flashing lanterns to convey messages. There is another way, too, though it is seldom used. When Volturn was constructed, a polished trough was cut next to it. The trough acts as a giant slide, as high as a mountain.
Aragon's lips twitched with a smile. Is it dangerous?
Do not think of trying it. The slide was built for dwarves and is too narrow for a man. If you slipped out of it, you could be thrown into the stairs and against the arches, perhaps even into empty space.
Saphira landed a spear's throw away, her scales rustling dryly. As she greeted Aragon, humans and dwarves trickled out of Trojanheim, gathering around her with murmurs of interest. Aragon regarded the crowd uneasily.
You better go, said Oric, pushing him forward. Meet me by this gate tomorrow morning. I'll be waiting.
Aragon balked. How will I know when it's morning?
I'll have someone wake you. Now go.
Without further protest, Aragon slipped through the jostling group that surrounded Saphira and jumped onto her back. Before she could take off, an old woman stepped forward and grasped Aragon's foot with a fierce grip. He tried to pull away, but her hand was like an iron talon around his ankle. He could not break her tenacious hold. The burning gray eyes fixed on him were surrounded by a lifetime's worth of wrinkles. Her skin was folded in long creases down her sunken cheeks. A tattered bundle rested in the crook of her left arm. Frightened, Aragon asked, "What do you want?" The woman tilted her arm, and a cloth fell from the bundle, revealing a baby's face. Hoarse and desperate, she said,
"The child has no parents. There is no one to care for her but me, and I am weak. Bless her with your power, Argetlam. Bless her for luck."
Aragon looked at Oric for help, but the dwarf only watched with a guarded expression. A small crowd fell silent, waiting for his response. This woman's eyes were fastened on him.
"Bless her, Argetlam, bless her," she insisted.
Aragon had never blessed anyone. It was not something done lightly in Iglesia, as a blessing could easily go awry and prove to be more of a curse than a boon, especially if it was spoken with ill intent or lack of conviction. Do I dare take that responsibility? He wondered.
Bless her, Argetlam, bless her!
Suddenly decided, he searched for a phrase or expression to use. Nothing came to mind until, inspired, he thought of the ancient language. This would be a true blessing, spoken with the words of power, by one of power. He bent down, tugged the glove off his right hand, laying his palm on the babe's brow. He intoned, Atra gulai, on ilen tother, ono un atra ono wise skolier frafrathur. The words left him unexpectedly weak, as if he had used magic. He slowly pulled the glove back on and said to the woman, That is all I can do for her. If any words of power to foretell tragedy, if any words of power, if any words have power to foretell tragedy, it will be those.
Thank you, Argetlam,
she whispered, bowing slightly. She started to cover the baby again, but Saphira snorted and twisted her head until it loomed over the child. The woman grew rigid, her breath caught in her chest. Saphira lowered her snout and brushed the baby between the eyes with the tip of her nose, then smoothly lifted away. A gasp ran through the crowd, for on the child's forehead, where Saphira had touched her, was a star-shaped patch of skin, as white and silvery as Aragon's Gedway Ignacia. The woman stared at Saphira with a feverish gaze, wordless thanks in her eyes. Immediately Saphira took flight, battering the awestruck spectators with the wind from her powerful wind strokes. As the ground dwindled away, Aragon took a deep breath and hugged her neck tightly. What did you do? He asked softly. I gave her hope, and you gave her a future. Loneliness suddenly flowed over Aragon despite Saphira's presence. Their surroundings were so foreign. It struck him for the first time exactly how far away he was from home. A destroyed home, but still where his heart lay. What have I become, Saphira? He asked. I'm only in the first year of manhood, yet I've consulted with the leader of the Varden, and pursued by Galbatorix, I've traveled with Morzen's son, and now blessings are sought for me. What wisdom can I give people they haven't already learned? What feats can I achieve that an army couldn't do better? It's insanity. I should be back in Carver Hall with Roran. Saphira took a long time to answer, but her words were gentle when they came. A hatchling. That is what you are. A hatchling struggling into the world. I may be younger than you in years, but I am ancient in my thoughts. Do not worry about these things. Find peace in where and what you are. People often know what must be done, and all you need to do is show them the way. That is wisdom. As for feats, no army could be given the blessing you did. But it was nothing, he protested, a trifle. Nay, it wasn't. What you saw was the beginning of another story, another legend. Do you think that child will ever be content to be a tavern keeper or a farmer when her brow is dragon-marked and your words hang over her? You underestimate your power and that of fate. Aragon bowed his head. It's overwhelming. I feel as if I'm living in an illusion, a dream where all things are possible. Amazing things do happen, I know, but always to someone else, always in some far-off place and time. But I found your egg, was tutored by a rider, and dueled the shade. Those can't be the actions of a farm boy, or the farm boy I was. Something is changing me. It is your word that shapes you, said Saphira. Every age needs an icon. Perhaps a lot has fallen you. Farm boys are not named for the first rider without cause. Your namesake was a beginning, and now you are the continuation, or the end. Ugh, said Aragon, shaking his head. It's like speaking in riddles. But if it's all foreordained, do our choices mean anything, or must we just learn to accept our fate? Saphira said firmly, Aragon, I chose you from within my egg. You have been given a chance most would die for. Are you unhappy with that? Clear your mind of such thoughts. They cannot be answered and will make you no happier. True, he said glumly. All the same, they continue to bounce around within my skull. Things have been unsettled ever since Brom died. It has made me uneasy. Oh, That was Saphira. Acknowledged Saphira, which surprised him because she rarely seemed perturbed. They were above Trojanheim now. Aragon looked down through the opening in its peak and saw the floor of the dragon hold. Izadar Mithrim, the great sapphire. He knew that beneath it was nothing but Trojanheim's great central chamber. Saphira descended to the dragon hold on silent wings. She slipped over its rim and dropped into Izadar Mithrim, landing with a sharp clack of claws. "Won't you scratch it?" asked Aragon. "I think not. It's no ordinary gem." Aragon slid off her back and slowly turned in a circle, absorbing the unusual sight. They were in a round roofless room, 60 feet high and 60 feet across. The walls were lined with dark openings of caves, which differed in size from grottos no larger than a man to a gaping cavern larger than a house. Shiny rungs were set into the marble walls so that people could reach the highest caves. An enormous archway led out of the dragon hold. Aragon examined the great gem under his feet and impulsively lay down on it. He pressed his cheek against the cool sapphire, trying to see through it. Distorted lines and wavering spots of color glimpsed through the stone, but its thickness made it impossible to discern anything clearly on the floor of the chamber a mile below them. "Will I have to sleep apart from you?" Saphira shook her enormous head. "No, there is a bed for you in my cave. Come see." She turned and, without opening her wings, jumped 20 feet in the air, landing in a medium-sized cave. He clambered up after her. The cave was dark brown on the inside and deeper than he had expected. The roughly chiseled walls gave an impression of a natural formation. Near the far wall was a thick cushion large enough for Saphira to curl up on. Beside it was a bed built into the side of the wall. The cave was lit by a single red lantern, equipped with a shutter so its glow could be muted. "I like this," said Aragon. "It feels safe." "Yes." Saphira curled up on a cushion, watching him. With a sigh, he sank into the mattress, weariness seeping through him. "Saphira, you haven't said much since we've been here. What do you think of Trojanheim and Al-Jihad?" "We shall see. It seems, Aragon, that we are embroiled in a new type of warfare. Swords and claws are useless, but words and alliances may have the same effect. The twins dislike us. We should be on our guard for any duplicities they might attempt. Not many of the dwarves trust us. The elves didn't want a human rider, so there will be opposition from them as well. The best thing we can do is identify those in power and befriend them, and quickly, too. Do you think it's possible to remain independent of the leaders?" She shuffled her wings into a more comfortable position. "Al-Jihad supports our freedom, but we may be unable to survive without pledging our loyalty to one group or another. We'll soon know either way." Chapter 55. Mandrake Root and Newt's Tongue. And that is where we will end for now. And I will read the rest at a later date.